What's going on, boys? It's number 36, reading through the book of Isaiah. Today, we're going to be jumping into a new series in Isaiah. We're going to be covering pretty much for the next 3 days about two different pretty known kings at the time. The king of Assyria, which goes by the name of Sennacherib. I may be saying that wrong, so please excuse me. Which is actually the title of this chapter. It's Sennacherib, and he's going to threaten Jerusalem. And then the second king we're going to introduce to is someone that we may be pretty familiar with. We might have heard in a service before, but a king of Judah by the name of Hezekiah. So for today, we're going to be looking at how the king of Assyria was launching this invasion. I actually did a little bit of research about the king of Hezekiah, really, and his kind of importance in this time. And what I came to the realization was that Hezekiah was a very, very well behaved and very well God-spoken man. And well, on the other hand, for Sennacherib, he was very greedy and very just wanting this and wanting that. And as you read, especially around verses 2 and 3, one of the things that I noticed was, Sennacherib is going to send this army to near Hezekiah's kingdom to set off in this invasion. And they get up to this field, and some of the palace administrators from Hezekiah's kingdom come out to greet him, and they share some very, very important words of wisdom to the soldiers of this army. And it's this field commander. I don't know if this field commander is specifically named, but one of the things that he says, I'm going to read verses 5 and 7, which is majority of what he says, but this is what I kind of thought was a pretty powerful moment to this current moment into our lives. It says, "You say you have counsel and might for war, but you speak only on empty words. On whom are you depending that you rebel against me? Look, I know that you are depending on Egypt, that splintered reed of a staff, which pierces the hand of anyone who leans on it. Such is a Pharaoh king of Egypt, to all who depend on him. But if you say to me, we are depending on the Lord our God, isn't he the one whose high places and altars Hezekiah removed, saying to Judah and Jerusalem, you must worship before this altar?" So what most of us would assume here is that, if we plant ourselves in a position to search for a new goal or take on a challenge, there's a period of time where we feel like we have all this power, where we can do it. And essentially what I wrote down here is that your mind makes you believe you have so much power, but you have no reliance. You have nothing to kind of pull from to be like, this is what I was told to do. This is what I pull from. This is my source. And in this case, the Assyrian army, they don't have that. They're just following what Sennacherib. Sennacherib is like, you know what? I'm going to go over here. I'm going to invade. He's like, I'm going to go over here and do this. And the armies are non-dependent. They're just going off of what they feel is right. They're like, well, I guess I got to go over here and attack this kingdom. And what we realize is, especially about the word reliance, when we rely on something, we're dependent on it. Rely and dependent, very similar words. But reliance is necessary to survive, but must be done properly to see the light. So think about, maybe, a scene in your head, and maybe there's a movie that this character has to, survive on this maybe desolate island or just whatever. And the only way they can survive is they have to go out and hunt and kill animals. And they have to essentially starve themselves. And they don't know what to do. They don't know if they're going to have enough to get through that day. But what we notice is that, God always provides for us. Always. In tough times, whenever we feel like we don't know what to do next, the best thing that we can do is ask God for help. He may not answer us directly, or he may not give us exactly what we want, but he's going to give us something to work with. And a lot of times people miss those chances because they overlook them, or they think, oh, well, that's too much for me. I can't handle that right now. But in reality, we can. We have to remember, this is God we're talking about. Like, if he's telling you to do it, I'm pretty sure we should be doing it. And so after this message is given, these people, are just kind of at a point where they just don't really know what to do. And this commander of the Assyrian army is going to give this, speech. I'm going to read just a small portion of it. Talking about Hezekiah. They basically call Hezekiah a liar, saying that no, he's not right. God is not going to, save us. He's not going to do this and that. You can't rely on God. Rely on Egypt. And that's one of the other things that, back in the verses 5 and 7, we're talking about relying on Egypt. We go back to a couple of chapters ago where we were talking about how these people were relying on Egypt, and that Egypt would be, turned up on its head. The land would be flooded. The river that supplied the Nile would be corrupt and everything. And, Egypt was a very kind of central hub at the time, and everybody relied on it because, it had great sources. It had, lots of wealth. And while I do believe that's a good thing that we can rely on things, I do believe that, on this earth, we must rely on a lot of things. We rely on our families, we rely on our parents to raise us and feed us in every day. But really, we should be relying on God all the time. It's one thing to rely on a certain person, maybe your spouse or a coworker, or, like I said, your family. But that can only do so much, because you're depending on them, and if they don't do what they say, you get mad at them and you can tell it right to their face. Whereas God, if God doesn't do what, it's not so that God doesn't do what you want him to do, it's that we don't know his timer. We don't know how he responds. We don't know how he, chooses that path. And when we don't like the way he gives us an answer, we tend to get angry. And that's the thing, we don't see God, we can't see God's face, so we don't know how he's saying these things or doing these things, and this leads us to some very dark times. And so I want to go back to this speech that is given by this commander of the Assyrian army. This is one of the first part of what he says to the people. He says, "Do not listen to Hezekiah. This is what the king of Assyria says. Make peace with me and come out to me. Then each of you will eat fruit from your own vine and fig tree, and drink water from your own cistern, until I come and take you to the land of your own, like a land of grain and new wine, a land of bread and vineyards." This is verses 16 and 17, by the way. And so what's the message here? It's that don't fall captive to the wicked ways of society. There's a lot of deceivers out there. A lot. You go pretty much anywhere in a big city or just an area with a lot of people, and there's going to be people trying to deceive, because they know that people are so quick to, jump to conclusions about things in today's society, and they're so quick to believe things, especially on the internet. They see things and they think, oh, that's real, and sometimes it's hard to differentiate whether it's real or not, or if it's AI or not, and it's a scary thing to think about. But we have to remember that, you cannot figure things out on your own, and we always need a leader. We always need someone to guide us and say, hey, this is where you need to be. This is what you need to be following. These are the values and, core beliefs you need to be following. And we do. But the reason why we don't isn't because we don't have accessibility. It's because we don't like the way it goes. It has to be on our way. But that's the thing. God wants us to be uncomfortable. He expects us to be uncomfortable. He knows we're not going to like certain things. He knows that we're going to probably question him. He knows that we're going to get upset and angry. But that's why he still does it. He still chooses it, because he knows in the end you'll look back and you'll thank him for it. And you'll be like, man, I don't know what I've done. Think about a new workout. Maybe you're trying to lose weight or gain weight, and you're like, man, this sucks. Like, I gotta, cut out all these calories. I gotta eat all this food. Like, this sucks. And then, 2 years in, you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're thinking, man, this is great. This is really great. Like, I don't know. Why did I get so mad at this before? Like, I feel great. I'm glad I stuck to it. And then the last thing that I want to read is probably one of the most important verses in this chapter, maybe even this whole series. It's verse 21, where it says, "But the people remained silent and said nothing in reply, because the king had commanded, 'Do not answer him.'" So sometimes silence / ignoring can be the most powerful response to give. Now, I'm not saying that you should just not respond to people anymore. That's not what I'm saying. Still have good conversations, but sometimes there's just people out there who are just straight up crazy and don't know what they're talking about and make no sense. And the best thing you can do is just not to even say a word, because number one, that'll make you look like the more mature person. Number two, that'll irritate the crap out of them. And I know that from firsthand experience, and it's very, very hard. And it's hard sometimes because you're thinking all these thoughts, you're like, like I could say that, but like I'm not going to. And it's not like a, well, oh, look at me, I'm better than you type thing. Like, no, it's not like that. It's more of a look, you're upset. This is what you're doing. Like, I'm going to be mature. I'm just not going to say anything, because if I do something, it could trigger and it could go in place that I don't even want to imagine. Because not only is it going to give them power to say, oh, look what they did. That's what people want you to do. People want you to give a response because they know that, makes them feel more wanted. It makes them feel more, oh, well, I got to respond to him. I'm better than him. Like, I irritated the crap out of him. And this is the problem with a lot of people, is that it's not that, we should never get mad. I do believe that, getting mad about things is just a normal thing of life. People are just jerks sometimes, and it sucks. I do, apologize for any of those people who are like that or have gone through that, or maybe I've said, things to other people. And I pray for you if, you were stuck in that phase to where, you were just battling back and forth. And I pray that if you were in that phase, that you'd understand that it's not okay, but learn that God still loves you and God still wants to have a relationship with you. He still wants to embrace you with his arms and show you how much he loves you. That's why he sent his son Jesus to die and show us how to live in a perfect life. And that is today's word. I hope that you guys have a great remainder of your week. Peace out, boys. See you soon.